So that since that time, especially beginning in 1989, when the sun began a 23-year cycle from 1980, this a 23-year sunspot cycle. The sunspot cycle goes in two halves, about 11 and a half years each, where the pulsations, the sunspots pulse from 30 degrees north and south in an 11 and a half year cycle, and they pulse until they get to the center, the equator, and that's when they reach a maximum intensity. And then they switch polarity, and then the pulsation begins again. Only if the upper sunspot was positive and the lower negative, in the second 11 and a half year cycle, the upper one's negative and the lower one's positive. They pulse again toward the center, they reach the equator, and they hit a max. And that's when the solar flares increase. Well, we know the solar flares and the sunspot cycles were as intense as in this last 23-year cycle as they have ever been. Now, it's interesting, the 23-year cycle began in 1989. Its first 11 and a half years peaked toward the end of 2000, early 2001, and then the whole 23-year cycle peaks in 2012. We know that the first half of the cycle we saw phenomena that we hadn't seen before, including an increase of plasma, that's ionized electrons in the atmosphere, which create many different spectacular rainbow effects in the clouds and in the atmosphere. A lot of you have seen these. Sometimes people call them sundogs. And it's a great increase of these, particularly in 1999, 2000, and 2001. We'll see a huge increase of these in 2011 and 2012. In 1999, I worked with a group of people in Picarquín in Chile for 7 weeks. We had about 144 people down there, and we were all following the new time and worked in groups according to the harmonics of the new time. And we worked on an experiment, and our experiment was to see if the different groups could coordinate and on certain days see if they could create rainbow effects in the sky. When we did the final experiment on this towards the end of the 7 weeks, we had really spectacular effects. The skies were just filled with rainbows. And we're operating with this, with the theory that the sky is particularly charged with plasmas, and our notion was that if we can create that, just like the medicine man who creates rain, our brain waves are electromagnetic, we can affect the electromagnetic field, that then we can create an effect where we can, as it were, telepathically stretch the aurora borealis and the aurora australis to connect at the equator and create a rainbow bridge that goes from pole to pole on both sides. In 2000, just before the data time on July 25th, a crop circle appeared, which basically was the image of the Earth's electromagnetic field with the Earth in it. And it was exactly the theory that we were working on. And we felt that we received a very strong signal that when we get to 2012, we can maximize this and create this effect, the circumpolar rainbow bridge around the Earth. There are many prophecies about the rainbow bridge in the Norse prophecies of Odin. You have the Bifrost Bridge, which is often depicted as a rainbow bridge. Many Native American traditions speak in the prophecies of the rainbow bridge. When the rainbow bridge appears, that the star people and the ancestors will be able to come across on that. So we've been working with many groups around the world on this visualization, and this is, I want everybody to have this, and what you do is you just what you see is at the center of it, you see that's the octahedral core, very stylized, but that's the octahedral core. You can see yellow and blue on the bottom and red and white on the top. You can see that's an octahedron. And then you'll see down the center there's a positive and negative coil, like a DNA coil. That's like the prana that goes through the center of the earth, just like the prana that goes through our body. Okay, goes in a double helix coil like that. Okay, you can see that. So that goes from the North Pole to the South Pole and the South Pole to the North. Okay, so the positive, negative charge goes through the center of the earth, goes through that octahedron. Then you see these structures. There's a red 7-pointed structure above, a blue one below on the polar axis. These are called time atoms. They visualize the red time atom spinning in a clockwise direction, and the blue time atom spinning in a counterclockwise direction. That neutralizes and stabilizes the polar axis. Okay. Then on the that's the pole. Those are the polar time atoms. Then on either side there's a white and a yellow. Those those time atoms govern the gravitational plane, and they move around. You can imagine them like paddle wheelers going around the gravitational plane, stabilizing the gravitational plane of the Earth. This, by mentally projecting this, and those four, you'll notice that each of them are made of 7 points. 7 times 4 is 28. That's the same number as the 28-day cycle. So when you visualize that, you're actually visualizing the stabilization of the Earth so that we don't veer off course, so that the extra low frequency experiments that are being done by the HAARP and so on, that they don't destabilize the Earth, that this is done to stabilize the Earth. Then at the center of that, then the plasmic energy streams in at both poles, but it also streams out again. So what we visualize is, and then you see the core is blown up, and you see the Earth around that. That core is right in the center of the Earth. You can visualize this actually in your heart. You can visualize the Earth in your heart, visualize the octahedral core in the center of the Earth, visualize those time atoms moving in the manner I told you, and that then telepathically you are directing the plasmic energy to come out of both poles and to come into a stream that creates a rainbow bridge around the Earth. And when you imagine that rainbow bridge remains stationary. You can imagine that one side is always pointing toward the sun, and the other side is always pointing exactly away from the sun to what we might call midnight. Then the Earth is always revolving within that. To take a while to think about that and visualize what that actually would look like, how that would affect our whole, what we might call the whole psychoatmospheric field of the Earth. As I said, we've been working on this experiment since 1990, in the late 1990s. We found out that we actually can create the rainbow effects. And now we're building up and saying what we want to do is create batteries, biopsychic electromagnetic batteries of human beings at sacred sites around the planet practicing this visualization. We have a maximum point of practicing this every July 25th, which is called the Day Out of Time. So, like for instance, this next coming July 25th, Day Out of Time, 2005, there will be lots of people around the world who are already doing this. You can join them in this common visualization.